We are at the midway point officially of this 2024 NFL regular season. 9 weeks in the books, 9 more weeks to go, 18-week regular season. See how that happens. And at the end of the opening half, we look at where the odds stand currently as we are about to embark on the second half from where they were on opening night in the preseason. The Kansas City Chiefs enter the year as the favorites to win a third consecutive Super Bowl championship. No team in NFL history has ever done that, won 3 consecutive Lombardis, or even played in the game for a third consecutive year. Plus 550 as the Chiefs remain the only undefeated team in the NFL, is now shorter by nearly $2 at plus 380. The Detroit Lions, though, Joe, might be the best team in the NFL. They are 7-1. They have covered in all 7 victories. A 12-1 price for Detroit has been slashed in half and then take off another dollar at 5-1. The Ravens number growing shorter. The Bills price shorter by half as well. The Niners have seen the number grow from 6-1 to 10-1 in an uneasy start to this season. San Francisco just an even 500, 4-4. Countless injuries on the offensive side of the football. Philadelphia's price was probably longer the opening month of the year, but after a 4-game win streak for the Birds, now back down by $1. And the Green Bay Packers at 18-1 before the year got started, add on $2, 20-1. Green Bay did not look great at home, and Jordan Love has dealt with a variety of short-term injuries this season, and yet the Pack still 6-3. We'll look elsewhere around the odds, but that's the biggest movement, Joe, we have seen for those Super Bowl contenders this season.
Yeah, and it's always interesting, Ben, right, at this point, because you look at the market and you start to go, okay, where are people overreacting to what they just saw, right? Recency bias is a pretty real thing here, especially you're coming out of a week where favorites went, 13-1 straight up, Ben, 10-4 against the number. The public had a field day. So you know what happens, Ben, is the public all of a sudden starts thinking, well, we got this. So why don't we just sprinkle a little something here on Kansas City to win it all, or Buffalo to win it all? They won't look anywhere near down the border on that other column, Ben, that second column, to think anybody could have the audacity to actually make a run at the Super Bowl. But the reality is every team on that list still has a shot right now, Ben, at winning a Super Bowl here, and certainly ain't running to the window to lay single digits with anybody right now.
Yeah, so, Joe, you mentioned how good favorites have been here as of late. It was the year of the underdog in the opening month. Those historic trends of underdogs of 5.5 points or greater, not just covering numbers and keeping it close, but winning outright. NFL favorites in the 15 games we had in Week 9, 14-1 straight up. This is just the third week in the last decade and a half. The last 15 years of NFL football, favorites have won 14 times or more with only a single loss. In the last 5 weeks, favorites are now 46, 27, and 1 ATS. It's a cover percentage north of 63%. Is that going to be the trend in the tail of the season in the second half? We shall agree. So, Joe, as you mentioned, maybe it's not worth running to the window on any of those short numbers. Certainly we can justify Kansas City as that short favorite, less than $4 at plus 380 to win a third consecutive Super Bowl, despite no team even playing in 3 straight Super Bowls. 8 previous back-to-back Super Bowl champions looking for that third straight. Nobody has ever gone to a third consecutive big game. Joe, the Lions have never played in a Super Bowl in franchise history. But this is a historic season and a historic 2 years in the Motor City. Last year, first divisional crown in 3 decades, first playoff win, an NFC championship game appearance in 32 years. The Lions have won an NFL championship back before the Super Bowl era and merger in 1957, but never the big one, never the Lombardi Trophy. Joe, do you believe that Detroit... Oh, we just lost Joe Ranieri. We'll get Joe Ranieri back here in just this. I didn't mean to offend with the Lions question if you are not buying in on Detroit. But, Joe, we have made the point here over the last few weeks, the last few days, that despite Kansas City being the lone undefeated team at the end of the opening half, perhaps the Lions are the best team in the NFL. What say you?
Well, how do you argue with it, man? I mean, all they seem to do is just go out and bulldoze people. I do think the biggest question with the Lions was the pass rush. Outside of Hutchins, I don't think anybody has 2 sacks on that team. So going out and getting Zadarius Smith, I think, will help. But that's the only question you have. Offensively, this is a Super Bowl team. This is a Super Bowl caliber team. Defensively is going to be the big question. And will they be able to, Ben? And this is a big if. Can they get home field advantage throughout the playoffs, or do they have to go outside in January in order to make a run at this? There's a big distinction between those two things.
No doubt about it, Joe. Yesterday, when the NFC odds were available, Detroit was minus 115, by the way, to earn that number 1 overall seed, not only the opening bye, but home field the entirety of the way to a presumptive Super Bowl berth. Ranieri, when you look at the AFC, the Ravens and the Bills are the 2 other teams at a plus 850 price or shorter. In fact, there are 4 teams, of course, shorter than a 10-1 number, 3 of the 4 from the AFC. We know the Chiefs are going to be tested by the Ravens, who look really good, and the Buffalo Bills, who look really good. But both of those clubs have postseason questions, or Kansas City does not. Could this be the year that either the Flock or the Bills change that playoff narrative surrounding their franchise?
Well, lucky for us, Ben, we're going to get to see a preview of those, are we not here? I believe we said Kansas City's got Buffalo coming up here, which is going to be interesting in Buffalo. There is a lot still to be determined. And unfortunately for the AFC, all those teams you just mentioned there, Kansas City, the Bills, the Ravens, they are going to have to devour one another on their way to representing the AFC. Not easy to do. I do think the Lions, if they're the best team in the NFC, we'll keep an eye on the 49ers because they are getting McCaffrey back, but who knows what version of him you're getting. But who's going to make a run at the Lions? I mean, I think the Lions, with that schedule of indoor games continuing, could very well have the easier path than what the AFC and those teams have to do.
So just to note, Week 11 now 2 weeks away. Buffalo will host Kansas City. The game is probably going to be a pick'em. Who wins outright? Will KC still be unbeaten? More than likely into that matchup. Buffalo has won since the start of 2021's NFL season. All 3 regular season meetings against Kansas City. All 3 coming in Arrowhead. The Chiefs, of course, have had the last laugh in the postseason. They have bounced the Buffalo Bills 3 of the last 4 years in the AFC postseason. Buffalo has been bounced by the divisional round in the last 3 years as well. Joe, let's go to the NFC, right? We're talking about teams with short prices. Only one team has a 3-digit number. San Francisco, the short favorites to win the NFC title before the year got underway. We understand why. Has dealt with a slew of offensive injuries. And the Niners have not looked good. They're 4-4 straight up this year, booked as a favorite in every single game. But the Niners did win their final game entering their bye week. On the other side of the bye, starting here in the second half and Week 10, Christian McCaffrey supposed to make his season debut. Would now be a time you would be interested in buying back into the 49ers at that longer 10-1 number.
Yeah, I mean, he's off the IR, back scheduled to play. Will there be a setback, Ben? It's something you got to worry about. But listen, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I've basically treaded water in order to be able to get him back. He is that big a difference maker, Ben. He is legit worth a field goal on anybody's power ratings when you're looking at it. When he's in that lineup, they're a different team. He's a difference maker, which makes the 49ers very dangerous if he's healthy.
The Niners, a 6.5-point road favorite in Tampa on Sunday, taking on the Buccaneers. It is NFL trade deadline day. We've already seen some moves. So we just showed you the Super Bowl odds, where things were when the season started. Now at the midway point of this 2024 NFL season, on deadline day, that is trade deadline day, around the National Football League. Joe, in the last few years, the NFL trade deadline has ramped up in its intensity. It's not quite what we see during Major League Baseball and a long summer of contenders trying to make those final moves for their October roster. It's not quite the NBA's trade deadline day either. But the NFL is intriguing this year, and we have already seen one deal done it's a big one for one of those Super Bowl contenders that has seen the most movement, the Detroit Lions, who were 12-1 before the year, now 5-1, the NFC Championship favorites. The second best price to win, Super Bowl 59, only behind Kansas City, trying to get to the big game for the first time in franchise history, making a big move on this Tuesday, acquiring Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns, and not much given up. Zadarius Smith in a 2026 seventh rounder headed to the Motor City for a 2025 fifth round pick and 2026 sixth round pick. One of the reasons, Joe, this was so critical for Detroit, of course, the unfortunate loss of the very talented third-year edge rusher, one of the more promising young defensive players and even proven defensive players in the NFL already at this stage of his career, Aiden Hutchinson, who is out for the remainder of this season. So the Lions get some reinforcements. They add Zadarius Smith. Should make an impact for Detroit on that defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and it was funny because I think he even talked about it a couple of weeks ago when it was rumored that he'd be on the trade block there come this time. And he had mentioned Detroit because he would love, to get to play Green Bay and the Vikings twice a year, two teams that he was a member of, that he knows very well that he would love an opportunity. And he's going to get, obviously, that opportunity to play them once again. But Detroit absolutely had to do something here to increase this pass rush. They have nobody on the team right now who has recorded more than 2.5 sacks through the first 8 games of the season, Ben. They had to do something, and I think for the price, you got a pretty reliable guy here that should be able to help everyone else here at least get to the quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Joe. Zadarius Smith this year in 9 games with the Browns has recorded 5 sacks. This trade was rumored early in the weekend, like Saturday before the Sunday slate. Of course, you're going to see how the game plays out for the Browns. Not that they're going to make a run to the postseason this year with that backup quarterback in Jameis Winston, but you kind of let the weekend play out, and then ahead of the deadline, that deal is now done. Zadarius Smith, who knows the NFC North very well, Joe, like you mentioned, spent 3 years in Green Bay after the first 4 of his career in Baltimore. 3-time Pro Bowler in his time in the NFC North in his 4 total years in the division. 3 with the Pack, 1 with the Vikings. Last year, his first full season in Cleveland, played 16 games, only 5.5 sacks. But, Joe, in his fully healthy years with Green Bay and Minnesota, 3, he recorded double-digit sacks each and every one of those seasons, earning Pro Bowl accolades each and every one of those 3 NFL years. So a big move for Dallas, where if there are questions about the Lions, perhaps it's that pass defense. Last year, a lead against the run, not great defending the pass. It's not just your secondary that is responsible for batting down balls or picking things off or causing incompletions. It is that pass rush. It is a huge acquisition for Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what they needed to do. They're all in, Ben, on this season, and we know this. Offensively, there's not a lot of question marks with this Lions team. Ben Johnson just made Matt LaFleur look absolutely stupid this past week. And we know the biggest question was always going to be defensively. Not so much if Hutchinson was still healthy, by the way. They'd be clearly the favorite here, I think, to win it all. But I think Zadarius Smith, for what was available and what you could get for him, I think the Lions continue to nail it, Ben, in the offseason and in season with some of these acquisitions. You got to love the direction they're heading.
Huge Sunday night football game in Houston to end out the Week 10 Sunday slate. The Texans take on the Lions. Detroit, a 3-point road favorite. Detroit has been a favorite in 7 of 8 games this year. The only time an underdog, they won outright against the Vikings as a very short dog in a crucial divisional duel. Of course, Detroit is 7-1, covering in all 7 games. 44-18 is the ATS record with Dan Campbell as the head coach since the start of 2021. They are the only team in the NFL covering in more than 61% of games. It is a 71% cover percentage. What a hit rate indeed. Joe, some potential other guys on the trading block on this Tuesday on deadline day. we expect the Saints to be sellers. They sold their head coach, fired Dennis Allen yesterday. Could Marshawn Lattimore or Chase Young be on the move? The Giants have had a great pass rush. In fact, they have the most sacks this year. Azeez Ojulari, might he be traded? Mike Williams, his future in New York doesn't seem to be there for the Jets. Could the Panthers move on from that veteran presence at the wide receiver spot, Adam Thielen? Another trade already happening. The Bengals acquiring the man known as Juice, Khalil Herbert, from the Chicago Bears. Kind of lost in the shuffle of the backfield after the acquisition of DeAndre Swift and the bigger back of Roschon Johnson. Khalil Herbert now on his way to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Moss, obviously, that there are serious concerns about the neck injury there. This will help the Bengals. They'll get more, a very capable runner who has shown over his couple of years here that he can carry the ball, not to mention he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So another good, sensible pickup by Cincinnati here early in this trade deadline.
Yeah, very much so for the Bengals, who, of course, have very limited margin of error. That includes a huge Thursday night game just 2 days away that we will look at in just a moment. I wonder how much the Saints sell, right? They're on a 7-game skid after an impressive 2-0 start. They are 2-7. The defense was awful with Dennis Allen, who was supposed to be that defensive guy. Marshawn Lattimore, he has been rumored to Kansas City. Doesn't seem to be overwhelming momentum that he has moved today on deadline day. But, of course, we will follow throughout this Tuesday. We'll talk Thursday night football, AFC North rivalry next. A huge Thursday night football game to kick off the second half of this NFL season. Joe, by the time we reach the second half of the NFL season, our Thursday night intrigue tends to dwindle, not in week number 10. Short week for sure, but a huge divisional duel between the Ravens and the Bengals in Baltimore 2 nights away in the Charm City. The Flock booked as a 6.5-point home favorite, total 52.5. The Bengals, of course, started winless, 0-3. They have won 4 of their last 6 games. That is good for Cincinnati, but the margin of error still is not really there. Joe, elsewhere for the Baltimore Ravens, they started 0-2. They, of course, have been great since that point, winners of 6 of their last 7. Are you surprised by the spread? Does 6.5 feel justified, or would you expect the number to be a little bit tighter entering this monumental divisional duel on Thursday?
Well, I'm shocked, Ben, given the fact that Lamar Jackson is 7-18-1. That's 28% against the number as a home favorite under 10 points. So this has not historically been a great spot to back Lamar Jackson at this kind of price here. And we all know Burrow as an underdog of 3 or more points, Ben, 16-3 against the number, including the playoffs. The biggest problem for Baltimore's defense has been defending the pass. And guess what? There is nobody playing better right now than Joe Burrow and the Bengals offensively and throwing the ball. I mean, they started 0-3, Ben, on the season. They're now 4-5. And this game is their season. Let's be reasonable, because from here on out, I don't see how they won't be a favorite in every game the rest of the way, the Cincinnati Bengals. If they win this game, they've got a really good shot of rebounding and making the playoffs, and then anything can happen. The Ravens off a great win, but let's be realistic here. What offensive pushback did they get from Denver? The answer is none. This is a different animal and a huge game, Ben.
So the Ravens, of course, who won 5 straight, now 6 of their last 7, booked as a favorite in every one of those games. But, Joe, up until Sunday, in those 5 wins where they had covered in every one, or at least pushed on the number, they were 5-0-1 against the spread. As a favorite of 6.5 points or greater, this will now be the 5th time this year for Baltimore. They had lost 2 outright. They had pushed against the Commanders, laying a touchdown at close. And last week, of course, was the first true cover as they blew out the Broncos as a 9.5-point favorite, winning 41-10. So as a 6.5-point favorite or greater this year, they are 1, 2-1 against the spread with 2 outright losses. The Bengals trying to do exactly that. Cincinnati, an underdog only twice this year, week number 2 against Kansas City, and then earlier in the year against Baltimore. They were catching 2.5 at home against the Ravens, lost that game by 3, so barely not covering, and lost the game to Kansas City by a point with some questionable calls late. They did cover in that game as a 5.5, 6.5 point underdog, 1-1 against the number. And Joe, you highlighted how good Joe Burrow has been when booked as an underdog. So I would lay this, or actually take the 6.5, rather with the Bengals in this spot. But, Joe, for Cincinnati, it's not just keeping this game close and winning a tough one short week on the road by a field goal or less. It's winning this game outright. So now we look at the odds and where things stand. Baltimore does not have the best record in the division. That is still the Steelers at 6-2. The Ravens a half game back. But they are the favorites to win the AFC North. They had that second best price to win the AFC Championship. This game is huge for Cincinnati. For any of those numbers, sure, but it's not really about the divisional chase for the Bengals. It's that playoff price for Cincy. And the number still remains minus 114, a minus money price for a team that started 0-3 and is still 500, below 500 rather, to get to the postseason. They win on Thursday in Baltimore. That number changes drastically and in a positive way.
Yeah, and listen, at this point, just go ahead and bet the Bengals on the money line for this game, because if they don't win this game, they're not making the playoffs, man. That's as easy as far as I'm concerned, it is. Their season could end on Thursday night if they don't win this game outright.
If they fall to 4-6, the number will take a hit. There is no doubt about it, because how little wiggle room there is for Cincinnati. But, Joe, to your point, they're probably going to be favored in their final 7 games. They win 6 of 7 or all 7. There's a lot of life for a double-digit win Cincinnati team. Hour 3, our third and final is next. Live right here on the early line. It is our third and final hour on this Tuesday. We welcome you back to the show. He is Joe Ranieri. I am Ben Stevens. So much to dive into here on this Tuesday, the end of the opening half of this NFL regular season. It is trade deadline day in the National Football League, and then from the NFL and the pro ranks, Joe, to college football. For the first time in the 12-team era of the college football playoff, the CFP Selection Committee from Grapevine, Texas, tonight will deliver their inaugural rankings in the 12-team era. How are they viewing what has been a wonderful college football season, generational for some, parity everywhere around the sport? It will be important, not just the top 4, the top 6, but everybody in the top 25, how it works for a group of 5 schools. Where are teams like Boise State and Tulane perhaps ranked as things move up and down? What are we going to see with some of the undefeated teams in the country, like BYU and Indiana? There is so much to dive through. We'll present what the betting odds are saying about the 12-team college football playoff, how a bracket might look if the season were to end today. So much to get into here in this third and final hour. And, of course, we'll talk some college basketball at the end of it as well. Joe, should be a great final hour here on the early line.
Yeah, and, I'm looking forward to hearing what this committee, or whatever you want to call it these days, comes up with for college football. I don't think there'll be a whole lot of animosity at the top of those lists, but as we get closer to bowl season, it's going to be real interesting to see the arguments that we're going to make as this committee continues to put it together over the next couple of weeks. I can't wait for it.
Sure. And, Joe, it all came to a head last year, right? In the final and 10th year of the 4-team format of the college football playoff. Really a year that we had not seen since the very first of the CFP, where there were so many candidates that were able to be there, that were qualified. I'm not talking about the election day here in America. I'm talking about the college football playoff, despite using the word candidates. But there were so many teams, Joe, that based on the resume were deserving of a spot based on the track record and the precedent that the College Football Playoff Selection Committee had set out for us in its 10-year history. But really, the CFP committee got a pass in the decade of doing this. Because they could say, all right, here's 4 teams. You have 2 losses or more. See ya. We know conference championships are something that we add to a resume. Great. Here's the top 4, 5, and 6. Interesting. And then who cares about the rest by the time we get to the final rankings? That cannot be the case any longer. They are going to have to make arguments all the way throughout the board with the 7 at-large berths available and, of course, the 5 highest-ranked conference champions that will earn an automatic bid to the college football playoff. I cannot wait. I think things might get fiery even on this first one. We shall see. But before we dive into the CFP, we talk the end of the opening half of this NFL season. The Chiefs, at the end of 9 weeks, midway through this NFL campaign, the only undefeated team left at 8-0. Listen, it's 18 weeks now in the NFL regular season. Every team plays 17 games. There's not a chance the Chiefs could stay undefeated all year long, right? That's what we had to ask the people in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, will the Kansas City Chiefs go undefeated this season? Yes or no? It is a simple question, probably more complexity to the answers than those 2 choices. And yet the public, Joe, overwhelmingly saying no. Nearly 91% of the vote in our Fade the Public poll saying the Chiefs will at least drop 1 game at a point this season. The public is correct. I do not believe that Kansas City will remain undefeated the entirety of the year. To expect that is almost insane, despite how good the Chiefs have been off to this 8-0 start. But, Joe, Kansas City has only covered in 5 of their 8 games, all 3 non-covers in games the Chiefs were laying at least 6.5 points. And as we have shared, the average margin of victory for Kansas City is just about 8 points. Last night, as a 9.5-point home favorite against the really banged-up Buccaneers, game had to go to overtime for Kansas City to decide it. 6 of their 8 wins by a single score. Kansas City is going to drop at least 1 game at a point this season, at least we would expect.
And the schedule does not get easy from here. They still have 2 games against Denver. They still have to play the Chargers. They still also have to play Pittsburgh and, of course, Buffalo. So there is this is not an easy schedule down the stretch. They've been good enough to win close games thus far, Ben, but at some point we both know that luck is going to run out. Regression will come, and they won't win every close 1-score game in the NFL. They're not blowing people out. It's not that kind of team, which means they're probably going to lose a few along the way. So I agree with the public.
Yeah, you have to, right? But when you look at the schedule for KC, the remainder of this season, Joe, we talked about it in the opening hour.
Yep.
They are going to be favored in at least 8 of their final 9 games. And more than likely all 9, at least a pick-em price. The one spot you would point to for Kansas City's first loss and the most likely L on the remaining slate is in 2 weeks, 2 Sundays in Buffalo, taking on the Bills. A huge regular season matchup against Buffalo. Right now, the early projected spread is Kansas City maybe laying a point on that spread. You could estimate it to maybe minus 118 money line for KC, and the Bills an even money plus 100 favorite, or underdog, I shall say. We'll see by the time we get there. But, Joe, that might be really the only spot that you look at the remainder of this resume that Kansas City is not going to be at least a field goal, 4-point, 6-point favorite the remainder of the way. When you look at the early projected odds, the only other spot right now, which is a little bit laughable, that Kansas City is laying less than a field goal, is in Cleveland in their 4th to last game of the year against the Browns team that has won 2 games. And it could be the Jameis Winston experience to the positive that day. More than likely, though, not the case. That is how favorable the slate remains for Kansas City. It's why their updated win total is 14.5. And I do believe the Chiefs have a good chance to flirt with that number at the very least.
Yeah, but also keep in mind, Ben, what might week 17 and 18 actually mean to the Chiefs if they've locked things up already? So you got Pittsburgh. You got to go on the road to Pittsburgh on Christmas. And then January 5th, you got to end it at Mile High. against Denver. So to thinking they'll run the table, man, they better be playing for something in week 17 or 18 because Pittsburgh might very well be a team they're going to see in a couple of weeks in the playoffs anyway. So there's just too big a roll of the dice here, I think, to expect them just to go ahead and run the table. They're going to lose a few along the way, and maybe even one to a team that we're not thinking they're going to lose to here, Ben.
For sure. And, Joe, you could maybe even see that this week, perhaps. They're hosting the Denver Broncos on a slightly short week. 9.5-point spread in favor of KC. Again, they have not been great as a 6.5-point favorite or greater this year. They're 1-3 against the spread. The Broncos did get beat down pretty good, though, as a 9.5-point road dog last week in Baltimore. They've got the Panthers the week after. They take on the Buffalo Bills. Kansas City is not going to be undefeated at the end of this year, at least not in my estimation. And the odds kind of reflect that at plus 850. Joe, if you do believe, though, that Kansas City has a shot at going perfect 17-0, I wouldn't bet that price. I'd do a 9-leg money line parlay that would pay you out better than plus 850.
Absolutely. Just keep rolling it over. Just keep money lining them and rolling it over, and you'll be much better shape than plus 850.
Yes, you will, and maybe make a lot of sense along the way.